Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. My name is Charles, and with me today, as always, is my lifelong friend and co-host, Dylan.
I'm ready to talk some fantasy with my friend, Charles.
I am ready to talk some fantasy with my friend as well, Dylan, and not just any fantasy today, because today we are wrapping up Friends Pitching Fantasy Week. You know, we've already done 2 episodes this week where I pitched 3 books to you, and then you pitched 3 books to me, but now it comes the time. You know, the results are in. We put those pitches out into the social media sphere, and we got some feedback, and now it's time to pick what are the next 2 books that we are going to read on the show.
Yeah, so this episode is going to finish up what we started in those 2 previous episodes that Charles mentioned.
Yep.
And if you want to listen to the pitches that informed what we're going to pick today, there's an episode where Charles pitches 3 books to me, among which I will select 1, and vice versa, a separate episode where I pitched 3 to Charles. And this episode, in that sense, has spoilers for Friends Pitching Fantasy. This is not a spoiler-free episode when it comes to our own show. It will be spoiler-free when it comes to talking about the books.
Yes,
but if you don't want to have anything spoiled for you when it comes to like having to hear the pitches when you already know the outcome, I mean, that's not as fun. Then now's a good time to turn this down in your headphones, head back to the episodes that we pitched the books in. But yeah, otherwise, if you're here for the big reveals, then you're in the right place. You're going to find out which books we're going to read of the 2 of the 6 awesome books that were pitched.
Well said, Dylan. 6 books have been pitched, but only 2 will be read on the show. Why don't we go ahead, since we started with my pitches, Dylan, why don't we go ahead and start with the social media results for the 3 books that I pitched to you?
Okay, gladly, Charles. So the 3 books that you pitched to me were The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. That's a sequel to The Rage of Dragons, which is, I actually have The Fires of Vengeance here now that we're doing a little bit of video. Maybe this will make it onto some sort of TikTok situation, whatever.
Yeah, there you go.
But I have Fires of Vengeance here. It's a sequel to The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter that we read earlier last year. And it was an awesome first book, so the sequel, we've heard amazing things, and we know we love Evan Winter. Mm-hmm. We've also got The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. That's book 1 of the Lightbringer series. Haven't yet read anything by Brent Weeks on this podcast. Charles has read some Brent Weeks. I've never read anything by him, period. A hole in my fantasy reading resume. And
He's been pitched many times, never selected, but we'll see.
That is true. I believe you said always the bridesmaid, never the bride when it comes to Brent Weeks.
I did say that.
But will today be different? You'll have to find out later in this episode. Then the final book that you pitched, people have probably heard of this one, Dune by Frank Herbert. And we've got a blockbuster film coming our way for this science fiction classic. This would be a chance to get ahead of the curve and discuss it before that movie comes out.
Very well said, Dylan. There's 3 tough choices. So as our social media keeper, why don't you give us a quick summary of how this poll shook out for you? Pretty interesting results here.
Yes, very interesting. So we put out polls both to the artist formerly known as Twitter and the social media platform that's always been known as Instagram. And we got some interesting results, if nothing else. Let's start with Instagram. You can find us at the FTF podcast over there. We had a ridiculously close vote situation here, Charles. We had coming in third was Fires of Vengeance with 31% of the vote. Then we had Black Prism and Dune tied with 35% of the vote each.
Wow.
That is not super helpful.
That's basically a three-way split. That's basically a three-way tie.
Yeah, I mean, won't get caught up on the 4% difference. Essentially, split through ways. Of course, I should mention, I don't think we have yet, that we are not beholden to these polls. We are going to use the information alongside our own subjective judgment to determine what is best for us as a podcast and for you, the listeners, even whether or not you want it.
Yes, exactly. This is just to help us. You're advising us on our choice. We can still choose whatever we want, but it's kind of good to see, get a pulse of where the people are. And in this case, Dylan, it sounds like they are evenly split. They're pretty indecisive, so it could go either way.
And it's not a huge difference over on Twitter, we'll call it, and that we have third place. You can find us at the FTF Podcast 1 on that social media platform, Twitter.
That's right.
And third place was the Black Prism with 28% of the vote. Second was the Fires of Vengeance with 33% of the vote. And we also had Dune coming in first by itself here, 39% of the vote. Not a resounding victory, but at least this one you can feel comfortable enough to
still
say that one
pretty
of
close to
win.
Evenly split, though. I mean, clear winner for sure, but I mean, you're all within the 30% range. So, wow, this may be the closest we've ever had in terms of an indecisive poll across both platforms. Usually, there's a preference like ekes out somewhere, or like two tie and one is in a distant third, but this is pretty much like an even split down the board for everyone. It's kind of wild. Although I will say, Dylan, I noticed that Dune is in the first place spot for both, even though Fires of Vengeance is only slightly behind. I mean, and then Black Prism, Dune's winning, but by a small margin. Does that affect you in any way?
I mean, it always plays a role. I've always been considered, between the two of us, kind of the man of the people when it comes to like our fan base and just like general relations with other human beings. So I feel like I always try to lean. If I'm undecided, I will always go with the poll. But you'll have to find out which one that I ended up choosing, because it's really tough, Charles. Anytime there's not a clear, resounding victor, it kind of doesn't give me the excuse to completely just say, oh, well, this is what the listeners want. I will say, too, that Dune had clearly the most like comments of people saying that they want us to read it, and also got an email about it. So those kind of things certainly inform my decision as well. I think Dune is on the tip of everyone's tongues in that way because of the movie and all
that. That's well said, Dylan, and I do not envy you and your choice that you have to make.
Right. Well, Charles, shall we get into your options, or should I make my pick and then we'll get into yours?
We've gone through the poll results. We've gone through all of the we vetted it out. We may as well make the choice at this point, and then we can just dive into mine.
All right. Well, let's start by talking about Brent Weeks, because you said always the bridesmaid.
I don't like where this is going. I don't like where this is going at all.
Is this the third time that you've brought Brent Weeks to Friends Pitching Fantasy, Charles?
At least, I mean, yeah, it's been a few times now.
Yeah. And it makes it really tough. You know, I feel this desire to get into Brent Weeks' work. I know I'll like it. It's one of the premier modern fantasy, like, especially once you start delving a little more into the, like, grim dark adjacent side of things, and also big for Sanderson fans. Like,
why do I feel like we're breaking up right now? It's not you.
Right. It
like
feels
I've been
right. In the
doing
always
some soul
the bridesmaid,
searching lately.
Never the bride. This moment, Charles, is the, like, there was an engagement, everything was leading up to it, and unfortunately I think I'm going to have to leave
my goodness.
Black Prism at the altar. And
No.
you know what it is, Charles? I actually really would like to read this book. I'm going to push for us reading this at some point in the relatively near future, reading Brent Weeks, because it's just egregious at this point that I haven't ever, and that we haven't covered any of Brent Weeks on the show. But I also want to say, when I was thinking about which book to pick, and I was thinking about this Brent Weeks stuff, I was like, you know what? Win a poll. Win a poll, Brent Weeks. And then, like, win a poll on either of the platforms. All right? Get your, like... I'm just calling out
believe
Brent
what I'm
Weeks
hearing.
as a person.
Didn't they just be tied for a win? Right?
No, but win what? It came in
That
last
is winning.
on-
That is winning.
No.
You the tie 35%, the most votes on the poll.
Get a resounding win on one.
Oh,
and don't
now
come
we're
in
moving the
last on the other.
goalpost, and now it's get the resounding win. What is it going to take, Dylan, for you to read Brent Weeks? You know, remember when I chose not to read Scott Lynch like twice, and then there was this whole campaign against me on social media? This is at least the third time you've rejected Brent Weeks over a much longer period of time. This is getting absolutely crazy.
Okay, well, first off, you rejected Scott Lynch's books for about a decade before the podcast ever started. So
hey, you know, you've been rejecting Brent Weeks all this time too. Okay, it's not like it's, you know, new all of a sudden.
I'll also say that's a thing. If during the peak of hashtag Charles must read Lies of Locke Lamora, when people were writing petitions, all kind of stuff, if I put a poll up after Friends Pitching Fantasy and asked people what you should read, it would be Lies of Locke Lamora, like 100%. It would sweep.
You've got
With this. It's like not no one. All of you voted for Black Prism. I appreciate it. But it's like, I need to see some passion.
It won a poll, man.
From the Weekenders, as they're called. That's the fan base's name, Charles. I didn't just make that
ridiculous.
up right now.
This is ridiculous. So what did you pick then? If we're not picking Black Prism, that narrows us down to two choices. We may as well just get it over with.
Okay, well, our two choices remaining are Fires of Vengeance and Dune. All right. And here's the thing, Charles.
What if I'm getting broken up with again? Or like we just went on one date and you're like, yeah, I don't think there's going to be a second. Like, here's the thing. You're cool, but need a resounding win in order for this to work.
Let me tell you the thing.
He has to pick something.
I do have to pick something. Charles, I'm rejecting all of them, and I choose that we reread Lies of Locke.
I think we reevaluate our friendship at this point.
We'll evaluate.
Maybe take some space apart.
Right. So here's the thing about Dune, Charles. All right.
About Dune. Oh, okay.
Yeah, here's the thing about Dune. Is I don't really think I'm going to enjoy it as much as I'm going to enjoy Fires of Vengeance. All right. I feel like to pick Dune is like, it's like eating your vegetables, right? You know it's good for you. You know that you really need to keep up your health, and in this case, to lose the metaphor, to build your own like resume when it comes to reading science fiction and fantasy and understanding the historical context. And Charles, I don't really like vegetables that much. Like I do eat my vegetables, but I'm always like, a lot of times I will eat my vegetables like first, just to get it out of the way, and then I will be like, okay, now I can really enjoy the steak or what have you that's on my plate. And it's because I'm in this rush. I'm like, all right, this is good for me, gotta get done, and then I can go have some fun. And Charles, that's why I'm going to pick Dune.
I was wondering if you were doing one of these reality show things on me. I was like, he's describing it like I was gonna be like, so you're gonna pick it or what? There we go. Okay, but not Fires of Vengeance, huh? Wow.
No, and Fires of Vengeance, to me, when I was like, which book am I just like most confident I will enjoy? It's the book that is a sequel to a book that I enjoyed a ton. Like Rage of Dragons was among our top reads of last year for both of us. And it's like, it's not like a release date is coming up for that third book anytime that I can see. Well, plenty of time to get the second book read. And it's like, it's time to eat our vegetables, or at least for me to eat my vegetables. It's like, I need to have read Dune. I need it in my back pocket when it comes to just understanding the historical context of science fiction for sure, but to act like it didn't have a huge influence on fantasy would be completely mistaken as well. And I really think, will I love this book? Who knows? But will I appreciate its context? Will I learn more about the genres that we love so much? And will I get to do it in a manner that's timely in reference to the movie coming up, and that I think services the fans who did, it tied for the win in one, and it won the other poll. So Dune is my choice, Charles, and is probably the book that I'm going to like the least of the options. But
you had a tough choice, Dylan, and I respect your decision, because if I feel also like if we are gonna read Dune on this show, like it's now or never. It was maybe when the first movie was coming out was the last time, and now it's this time, and then after that it's like, why pick that over anything else when we could just read it later? Like there's so much great fantasy out there, as we've seen from these other two books, to even compete with such a classic as Dune. They held up very well. So as much as I'm sad to see Brent Weeks become a bridesmaid yet again, as excited I am to read Evan Winter's second book in The Burning, I think the timing and also just the fan vote, even though it was pretty evenly split, just nudged it over. So between that and the movie, I think you made a very good call here. I may have done the same thing, honestly.
Yeah, I appreciate that you brought it to the table for this time. I feel like we're doing a service here to the listeners who wanted it more than the other two books when you do add.
And I'll say this, I think you'll enjoy the book. It's very entertaining. Like the narrative is a bit of an older style, but hey, it's more of a space opera than a boring dated sci-fi book. So I think there will be a lot to enjoy there. But that's exciting. So Dune is the first book that we are bringing to the show. I think that's wonderful. And now that brings us to your three books, Dylan, and I have to pick one of these.
Right.
I've got the results here, so I can read through them if you want, since you read through mine, or you can read them if you want. It's up to you.
Well, you can read them, and I can speak a little bit more to the story behind the results, what was going on social media.
Yes, because these results I did not see these results coming. I'm very fascinated by them. And you're our man on the ground getting these polls in. You know what's happening in these markets. So we'll definitely need your insight into where these numbers came from, because I'm absolutely shocked by the results. But here we go. So the three books, Dylan, that you pitched to me that I have to choose from today are basically the remaining two books from Scott Lynch. What's the name? The Gentleman Bastards series. That would
Yes.
be the first book is Red Seas Under Red Skies, which obviously a lot of history with Scott Lynch and the Lies of Locke Lamora, a book that I loved. And Red Seas Under Red Skies is a book I definitely want to read. So that's a very exciting option. Legacy of the Brightwash by Krystle Matar. You know, we're very familiar with Krystle and this book. Just a social media darling, Spiffbo finalist. Dylan, your pitch was a powerful one the other day. I didn't really know much about the story, and it seems like a really exciting, like mystery thriller kind of story. So you had me very interested there. And then Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson, book one of Malazan Book of the Fawn. I was not expecting you to bring that to the table. I was a bit shocked. And I was kind of nervous going into the polls because if it had swept unanimously, and I'll say this, had to win by a large margin. By a large margin, then I would feel like I had to read it. So some very tough choices there, some titans and then some, indie darlings as well. And it's just a very exciting group, but nothing could have prepared me for the results that you shared with me earlier today. And Dylan, I think you have to explain what happened here.
Yeah, sure. So you want me to run through the
Yeah.
results?
You're our social media guy, man on the ground, all that stuff. You should kind of walk us through it, analyze the data, if you will. Kind of like
All right.
during election day when someone's like, "Oh yeah, this area is voting this way. You know, they typically run that way, and then over here we got this number, and this is the swing area here. You know."
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go through the actual data and then we'll get to the interpretation. The actual data has, let's start with Twitter. And let me just say too, this is we had over 200 votes in the Twitter poll alone for this particular poll.
Mm-hmm.
Just the books that you need to decide on here. So I feel good. We got like a solid sample. And
seriously,
in last place is Red Seas Under Red Skies with 23%, which is, it's pretty wacky. We've gone from change.org petitions and like just constant berating of you on social media, demanding that you read The Lies of Locke Lamora to like, I guess people are satisfied. I guess people feel like you did what you had to do with that series because they're like, right? Red Seas Under Red Skies, Republic of Thieves. Who cares? So the people are not demanding it for the most part. Although we did have one comment that if you did not choose Red Seas Under Red Skies, then there would be a bag of dog feces delivered to the FTF headquarters. I assume that, yeah. And I assume this is heading toward FTF East, not heading toward FTF Mountain region, because it appeared to be directed at you. But
wow.
Yeah.
I'm getting in trouble with Scott Lynch fans everywhere. I got to watch my step.
Yes.
Literally.
And yes, furiously mail a bag of dog, a word I can't use on our clean podcast, but dog excrement to the FTF headquarters with Charles's name on it and a strongly worded letter to the manager. And Scott Lynch was tagged in this post.
What? Wowie zowie.
That's what's going on. But
I have to get on Twitter and prepare a response.
Scott Lynch might have to prepare a response, Charles.
I mean, yeah, if he wants me to read it, a response from Scott Lynch would be very compelling. Feedback for sure.
Well, it's a little late for that. We did have an email writing in request for Gentleman Bastard as well, but let's be real here. The poll has it very clearly in third on Twitter anyway. And then second place with 33% of the vote is Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. And that means that the winner of this poll was Legacy of the Brightwash with 44% of the total vote. And this is really interesting to watch play out because we know the Malazan fan base is just rabid. We talked about that in the episode where I pitched it to you, Charles. And it was playing out that way for the beginning of the poll. And then I purposefully do not tag the authors in these polls because I just think it's kind of awkward to tag a bunch of authors in a thing where it's like, we're forcing you all to compete with each other against your will. So I'm like, they don't have to see it. If they stumble upon it, that's fine. But so Krystle, I believe, was tagged, and then she ended up just being like, oh, do you see any that you recognize here? Like, quote tweeting it, not even with a very explicit, like, go vote for me. Like, and
she was playing it cool.
Fans,
I can respect that.
Yeah, her fans swarmed the poll, and it went from like Gardens of the Moon clearly winning to Krystle overtaking it, and just, as you can tell, this was a resounding victory. And I mean, it just speaks to what an incredible supportive community that is, and how many people are super passionate about Krystle's work. So that was awesome to watch play
Krystle
out
on a resounding victory. Like, wow.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. I mean, I was expecting it to be closer, but Malazan and Scott Lynch, like, they've got big fan bases, so it was pretty surprising. I wasn't expecting such a decisive victory and such a big turnout also, like considerably larger than the 3 other polls that we did. So very, very cool to see, for sure. Something I definitely have to take into consideration. But there's still one more poll that I had to consider as well.
Yeah, this poll, Charles, is the same books but on Instagram, and this is a very different story. We had Legacy of the Brightwash in third with 8% of the vote on Instagram, and then Gardens of the Moon with 44% coming in second. And that actually left Red Seas Under Red Skies winning out with 47%. So pretty close to Gardens of the Moon over there. But yeah, we have, I believe, we've got the book that came in first on, on any... Okay, the book that came first on Twitter was in third on Instagram. The book that came in third on Twitter was in first on... I'm really messing this up. The spots were reversed. Red Seas Under Red Skies got last on Twitter. It got first on Instagram. Legacy of the Brightwash got third on Instagram. It got first on Twitter.
And then distant third versus a resounding first, It's like crazy.
You learn about the communities.
What the heck is going on? Know?
Twitter is much more the home of this indie author community that is very supportive of each other, and it's, I think, where Krystle is way more active. I think she does have an Instagram, but I don't see her on there as much, and I think that it just shows that most of her fan base is hanging out over there, and it's also easier. So I'm putting these on Instagram stories. So it's also, you basically have to be following FDF Podcast and then click on our story for that day. And then you see the poll. So Twitter, it's a little bit easier for it to get disseminated out toward.
I see.
Like a Krystle couldn't disseminate it out toward her fan base. And I don't know if she caught wind of the poll going on Instagram either.
Wow.
So it's it's interesting. You learn about it's also the home of Spiff Bow's home is Twitter way more than it is Instagram.
You're right.
And a big part of that is also like Mark Lawrence is way more active on Twitter, and that's he was the creator of that competition. So very different results, Charles, and you've got a tough choice on your hands.
Yes, well said, Dylan. I mean, it and great analysis, by the way. Really informative here. I'm getting the full picture of what has happened here. And I gotta be honest with you, Dylan, when I came in today, like before seeing the results, I was pretty decided on Scott Lynch, I'll say. I was pretty decided. And you always try and stay open to the polls, right? Yeah, and so you always kind of want to see. And I've never been more compelled to change my mind from one of these FPF polls than I have here. Gardens of the Moon, Dylan, with Gardens of the Moon, sometimes it's not them, it's me, And it really is me in this case. Gardens of the Moon is a great book and a great series, and I love Scott Lynch, but I'm just in a place in my life right now where I'm not ready for that kind of commitment. I think they're great, and I wish them the best of luck, and I know they're going to do really well, and who knows, maybe there's some time we can connect again, and we can hang out as friends and all these other things, but I can't choose it today. It's not gonna happen. So the question is, do I come in with my preconceived kind of choice to go Scott Lynch? I was a huge fan of his first work. I'm afraid of the social media backlash that could come from not picking Scott Lynch again. I've made that mistake before.
What about
I'm already getting threats
of dog poop?
I know the threats are already coming
have fear
in.
Of that?
I'm definitely afraid, so that definitely has some sway. But I mean, when you look at the numbers, this legacy of the Brightwash, Krystle Matar, one, I realized how little I knew about the story, and your pitch was very compelling. I'll say that at the beginning. And then two, these results are decisive, like they're crazy. And yes, Legacy of the Brightwash was a distant third on Instagram, but when you combine both polls together, all the votes, she's still ahead by a respectable margin. And the write-ins that we got about Krystle Matar were welcomed as well. She's been super supportive on social herself, promoting the book, and I'm just really interested to see where it goes. So now I'm super torn, more torn than I've ever been for Friends Pitching Fantasy. And then when that happens, at the end of the day, Dylan, I too can be a man of the people. You know what I'm saying? I too.
You are wearing a hat.
I am wearing a hat, which I don't see how that's related. It's true, though. It is true. Thank you for mentioning that. During my big moment.
Please go on.
I'm good now? Okay, so I can be a man of the people. I am allowed
just a plain white hat. Like, where do you find
man.
Just a plain white hat with no logo on it, Charles?
Hey man, we have no sponsors. We have no, allegiances. We are very neutral here on the French Talking Fantasy podcast. That being said, if someone wants to be the official hat sponsor, hit us up.
There's a blank space for you on Charles's
and I'll write your name right here,
Ooh, well done.
Thank you. So anyway, as I was ramping up my big moment here, so I too can be a man of the people, Dylan, and I think that
builds attention to distract.
And I think when I said that, I kind of was basically saying my pick. So I am going to choose Legacy of the Brightwash by Krystle Matar, which I'm kind of surprised by, but I'm very excited about. I'm excited about tattooed corpses and mysteries and
In the book.
and procedural dramas. Yes, purely fictional for entertainment purposes only. I'm very excited, and I'm very excited to enter the conversation with all those Krystle Matar fans who rose up to the occasion.
Matarmi.
The
I call them the
Katarmi.
Matarmi.
Oh, the Matarmi. Yes.
Matarmi.
I'm Matarmi
Matar.
Nation now. It's
Yes.
I should get a Legacy of the Brightwash hat for my next episode. And no, I'm super excited about it. It wasn't where I thought it was going to go at the end of our recording, but I've just gotten more excited about it, and seeing the polls and the response has made me doubly excited. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. My pick is Legacy of the Brightwash by Krystle Matar. Let's go.
You did the right thing, Charles. I really think you did. So I didn't want to sway things too much in the direction that I want things to go, but when I watched that play out, that wave of support from the Matarmi on Twitter, I found myself being like, oh wow, I really hope Charles picks Legacy of the Brightwash, because we've got like Krystle's and like quote tweeting it, and she's so excited that she won the poll, and she knew, she was like, I know this doesn't mean that Charles has to pick this. It just means like she was just really excited to see the outpouring of support where she was able to overtake and win by a large margin over like Malazan, which is the go-to book when you're trying to be like, oh, what has the most rabid fan base? It's like Malazan. Well, it's like, what has an even more rabid fan base on book Twitter? Legacy of the Brightwash. And,
right?
Yeah, so I saw Krystle getting happy about it and seeing all this support, and I was like, oh, well, I really hope Charles picks it. And you did, Charles, because you are a hat-wearing man of the people. And it's just a wonderful day here on the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast. I was saying to Krystle on Twitter, I was like, well, Charles will pick what he picks, but watching this outpouring of support makes me want to read this book right away anyway. So now I don't have to read it separate from the show. I get to read it alongside my lifelong friend, and then we get to discuss it on the Friends Talking Fantasy. And what could be more fun than that?
Not much, man. Not much. Well said. I'm super thrilled, and Krystle, if you're listening, I would gladly, step on a bag of dog poop for the opportunity to read your book on the show. I'm gonna watch where I step, but I make that choice willingly and enthusiastically. So super excited to get into that. Now, Dylan, okay, you have chosen Dune by Frank Herbert to read for the show. I have selected Legacy of the Brightwash by Krystle Matar. The results are in, but the question still remains, what order are we going to read these books in? We can't just pick one and read it first. Just like, there needs to be some sort of process, right?
Oh, of course there has to be, Charles. And this used to exclusively be an audio format. Now we're cutting some clips of it to try to upload to TikTok and Instagram and some YouTube shorts and all that kind of stuff. But there was a time, Charles, where we did something called the audio only coin flip to decide between the two books for what to read next. Now, Charles, I believe we'll just call it a coin flip, and we
That's
can
right. For the first time in FTF, history, we are doing a live recorded coin flip. Dylan, the rules are the same as always. I'm going to share my screen.
Will it show up on the Zoom video?
Here. What?
Will it show up on the video?
I think it will. We'll just have to see.
Cool.
I'm sharing the wrong screen. This is going great.
Yes, well, all of your texts are showing as well.
Well, beautiful.
Don't upload that part.
What about this?
That looks like a coin to me. Yes.
Excellent. So here we are now, Dylan. The time-honored tradition. I will do the flip. You will call the coin. And I think if you're correct, we'll read the book that you chose or that you pitched. How do we do this?
Yeah, we've
time-honored tradition.
it in multiple ways. Yeah, time-honored tradition that we can't remember how it works. I think that if I call it correctly, we will start with the book that I chose among the ones that you picked.
That sounds right. So you call it. If you call it correctly, we are reading Dune. Otherwise, we are reading Legacy of the Brightwash. So Dylan, are you ready?
I will call it In the Virtual Air.
All right. Ooh, I'm nervous. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Tails never fails.
He says tails, and it's tails. Oh my gosh, never fails. Congratulations, Dylan. We are reading Dune, followed by Legacy of the Brightwash. How are we feeling?
We're feeling great, Charles. Like I said, I like to eat my vegetables first. So I'm excited to get Dune, to digest Dune, because I think there's going to be a lot to digest in that, which is a word that's not disgusting to use under normal circumstances. But when you lead by calling it vegetables and then you talk about digesting it, it is kind of gross. But I'm ready to digest Dune and all that comes with it. And then, Charles, we get to the main course of Krystle Matar's Legacy of the Brightwash. And
I'm so excited for both of these. You know, it's then we'll have time to watch the Dune movie. There's so much that we can go on about, and we are just gonna have so much fun for the next couple months on the show. You're not gonna want to miss it. And that concludes another exciting series of friends pitching fantasy. 2 exciting, excellent books. I'm really looking forward to it. You know, one thing that this always does, this series, is it really gets me excited for what's coming up. You know, sure, we could just pick a book, but what's the fun in that? You know, we've got audience participation, we've got pitches, we got coin flips, we got hats. It's just so exciting.
Yes, yeah. I will say, Charles, this is not the pair of books that I thought we were going to emerge with.
No.
Yeah, I will say I was like, I don't exactly know which ones are going to pick, blah, 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 but this was a huge surprise. Like, I did not think I was going to pick Dune. I was pretty confident that you were going to end up picking Scott Lynch, because I knew you. I don't think you ever fully made it back from me pitching Malazan to you. like you left that episode just like I could tell, just mentally fatigued, and I don't know if you ever quite returned, but I was like, it's gonna have to take a huge showing probably from the Matarmi to beat out Scott Lynch, because you loved the first book. And
oh yeah,
Charles,
I have full intentions of reading Red Seas Under Red Skies, and you know, I've been wanting to read Legacy of the Brightwash too. And listen, I think Malazan's a great series.
You keep saying that.
I think it's great, and I'm so happy for it.
Right.
But
you just wish it finds some other reader to settle down and be happy with, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's me that's the issue here. You know, I understand that. So I don't want any of you Malazan fans to feel bad about what happened here today, okay? It was not your fault. It's just, it is what it is. And we got some reading to do now, or we got to dive into Dune. Wow.
2 hefty books here.
Hefty books. Is Legacy of the Brightwash hefty?
Legacy of the Brightwash. I mean, it's pretty hefty. It's a chonker. I mean, let me look up the actual length of it.
Okay. Well, we love our chonkers out there.
Yes, chonkers are beloved by the Friends Talking Fantasy podcast.
Mm-hmm. Books of all sizes.
662 pages.
Oh, that's a chonker.
That is a chonker.
That is a
Yeah.
chunker. All right. Well, yeah, we've got a
some
lot of
serious
reading to do. Yeah, we're going to have to come up with some fillers episodes.
Well,
Get
don't
thinking
you worry,
now.
Charles, because I read Fourth Wing, and I can
Oh.
discuss that in a spoiler-free format at some point
Love
in
that.
the near future.
Some book recommendation series, I'm sure. We
Yeah.
could maybe watch Dune Part 1.
That is a good idea. I think we're gonna have to find ways to fill our time because that's, I'm sure between Dune and Legacy of the Brightwash, we've got well over 1,000 pages, right, in reading to do. How long
Right,
is
for
Dune?
sure. I think Dune is like 500 and change.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got a lot of reading to occur. So let's not waste any more time and let's get right into the reading, Dylan. We got a lot of reading to do. Like, thanks everyone for another really exciting FPF. I think that all that there is left to do now is get that sweet, sweet outro music pumping. What do you say, Dylan?
Let's get that sweet, sweet outro music pumping, Charles.
All right, here we go. Thank you, everyone, one and all, for listening to yet another very exciting episode of the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast. If you like what you heard today, if you want to support the show, let's talk over the socials. Your support, likes, follows over on the socials means a lot to us, and that's over at the FTF Podcast on Instagram and the FTF Podcast with number 1 at the end on Twitter. Also, I swear we recorded all these videos. We're going to publish them on the TikTok, the Instagram Reels, the YouTube Shorts, all that stuff. So be on the lookout for those as well. Just search us on the Friends Talking Fantasy Podcast and give those some love. Now, Dylan, if
At
they
the
like what they
FTF Podcast on TikTok.
at the FTF, ooh, that's a good handle for TikTok.
It is. Hopefully we have some content up for you all to enjoy by the time you're listening to this.
Well said, Dylan, well said. And if they want to support the show even more, Dylan, then engaging with us on the socials, including our brand new TikTok page at the FTF Podcast, what can they do?
Toss 5 stars to our podcast, which you can do over on Spotify. You just gotta click About and then click where the little rating is, and then you throw us 5 stars over there. You can also rate and review on Apple Podcasts, and that means you can write nice things about us, and you can say, hey, I bet Charles looks great in that plain white hat with no logo, no sports team, nothing. He's just supporting the color white. Is that so wrong,
no
people?
Loyalties. I have no loyalties.
Yeah, but you don't.
See, I knew you weren't
really...
going to pick the Black Prism, which is why I wore this.
It was a
white
political
hat.
statement. It does go well with the AirPods, I have to say. So
it's accessorizing. You know, I got the
It
white
does
shirt
look-
on too. You know, I'm doing my best over here.
Oh yeah. Well, you don't have to write about Charles and his white hat in a review. Just listening is more than enough. Thank you so much for doing that.
Well said, Dylan. Just listening. You guys are so awesome. I tip my cap to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And as always, go forth and conquer, friends.